Well, shots ring out in the barroom night. Enter Betty Valentine from the floor above. She sees a bartender in a pool of blood. Cries out, they've killed my love. Here comes the story of the hurricane. The man the authorities gave to blame for something that he never done. Put in a prison cell, but one time he could have been the champion of the world.
So now John is in jail, trying to desperately prepare some semblance of a defense for his upcoming jury trial, terrified for his future, knowing that this system is ready to chew him up and spit him out once again. And that is when we arrive at the jury trial, and the unthinkable happens. John wins. The jury finds him not guilty. Though he is not able to call a single witness to the stand, the jury finds him not guilty. Apparently, some people in the county of Clearfield still have common sense about them, and they can smell BS from a mile away, which was exactly what this case smelled like to anyone with a critical mind. So John wins his jury trial. But, as with everything that's happened so far, there is no happily ever after. If you remember, back when John actually incurred these charges, when Officer Podlisky wrote up the charges that Officer Curry had originally declined to bring forth against him, there were two separate charges. One summary violation for harassment, and one misdemeanor for stalking. Now, the trial was for stalking. He was found not guilty for stalking. But the descriptions, remember, for stalking and for harassment were exactly the same. It was the same exact situations that were listed. One of them being contingent upon whether or not he was actually outside of her house on August 3rd, 2015, which we know he wasn't. The jury believed he wasn't, and he had the alibis to prove that he wasn't, but those were not allowed to be entered as evidence, and he was not allowed to call any of his alibis to the stand. So, what does Judge Cherry do? And by the way, I would love to read this transcript to all of you, despite its length, but the Clearfield County Courts are asking for $400+ for a copy of this transcript, not something that our family has available to throw at a bunch of pieces of paper at this moment. But it's pretty easy to tell exactly what occurred from the fact that the jury found him not guilty. And then what happened? Well, Judge Cherry dismissed the jury, he thanked them for their service, and then he ruled John guilty on the summary violation before quickly getting up and leaving the courtroom, according to witnesses. In fact, he did it under his breath and so quickly that John and many others in the room didn't even realize what had just occurred because they were elated at the fact he had been ruled not guilty by the jury. They thought that the other charge for the exact same thing was going to fall into line, and it wasn't until later they realized that he had actually still been found guilty by Judge Cherry. Somehow, I'll leave it to you to figure out exactly how that one happened because frankly, I'm not smart enough to be able to piece the puzzle together there. Now, this is just a summary violation, which is basically a violation of the lowest degree, and why does it matter? Why is this even something they were pursuing at this point? Well, if you read the PFA law, every little allegation, every little thing on the record counts. If you're trying to build a case against someone and make future allegations seem more credible, even though you're not providing actual evidence for them, it helps to have something like a found guilty of harassment charge on the record alongside two PFA violations, because then it makes getting the third and fourth and fifth and sixth and so on PFA violations much easier because you're building what's called a fact pattern, a course of conduct that a person is engaging in that gives you some light as to what their intention might be. Basically, John is being built into someone who, despite what the court says and despite what the legal system keeps doing to him, cannot stop harassing Tara, cannot stop stalking and following her around, and because of that, future allegations are much easier to swallow, so to speak, and it doesn't look as strange if someone simply looks at the record and sees these charges without understanding exactly what's going on. At this point, knowing he's in jail for at least 6 months, John requests house arrest due to his failing health and the conditions at the jail. Remember, sleeping on a cot, jail is overcrowded. He's denied, of course. I'm not sure what he or anyone else in that situation would have optimism for at that point. So in summary, the PFA, the first PFA violation, he pled guilty to it because he was tricked and he thought he was pleading not guilty. He doesn't remember actually pressing the like button on Facebook, and nobody has yet shown him evidence that he has pressed the like button on Facebook. His lawyer completely abandoned him without filing any documents that he put into evidence or advocating on his behalf at all, only asking him to sign documents and telling him they were for things other than what they were actually for, and he had criminal charges stacked against him in a manner so that even if the jury found him not guilty, the judge could still rule him guilty and make sure that there was an offense on the record, continuing to build the fact pattern in the course of conduct. The district attorney killed his defense before the jury trial after he had been convicted of the PFA hearing, and at the PFA hearing, and was in jail, so he had really no recourse at that point. He was denied for a public defender because they said he made roughly $20 too much per month. He was arrested for the bogus second PFA violation because apparently he thought he was David and he was role-playing, and she was Goliath, and he was going to kill her when he asked for prayer. He was in jail for the entire 3 weeks leading up to the trial, and still won with the jury ruling him not guilty. Despite all that, Judge Cherry comes back and rules him guilty of the summary violation. You tell me. So up until now, everything that I have been talking to you folks about has been me piecing together the narrative from before I actually was a part of this investigation. I came into this investigation, I gathered all of the documents and evidence that we've talked about thus far up to this point, and I have pieced it together to form the narrative that you have heard. After this episode ends, though, it turns into my personal investigation after the fact, John being in jail, all of the proceedings having concluded, and simply trying to find out exactly how it got to this point. So if you think that the information we've talked about so far is juicy, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thanks for listening to this episode of Corrupt Clearfield. Remember, you can follow along with all of the documents I'm referencing at corruptclearfield.com. Just scroll down and click the link to the Dropbox file. All the documents are cataloged in order as they appear in each episode. You can also help to support this investigation as it continues, and also our family as we attempt to recover from the damage that has been done. You can donate either by going to corruptclearfield.com and clicking the link as you scroll down the page, or you can go directly to paypal.me/crazygaby. That's my broadcasting alias. Again, that's paypal.me/CRAZ as in zebra, Y, GAB as in Bravo, EY. Thanks for listening. Until next episode.